Infor is one of the largest ERP software vendors in the space. But what exactly is Infor and what do they do? I decided to come to their global headquarters here in downtown New York City to find out. I'm going in. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent and technology agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach their third stage of digital transformation success. And when we're learning about a software vendor, oftentimes it's easy to look at the features and functions and technology that's involved. And that's an important criteria. But what I also want to do in this series called Behind the Scenes with Software Vendors is really understand the faces and the brains behind the software vendors and understand what makes them work. So with that being said, let's go talk to the leadership team here at Infor. Michael,
Eric,
good to see you.
good to see you too. I'm Infor.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
I'm excited to do this and learn a little bit more about you guys and get to know some of the leaders within your company a little bit better.
Absolutely. We're excited to be here with you today here in New York City.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, glad to be here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You and I know each other. We've known each other for a few years now, but tell the audience what you do.
We go back. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a senior director here at Infor. I lead consultancy relations for North America. So I work with folks like yourself and the advisory firms, selection consultants, influencers, several different names for them, but people out there who are working with their clients to select new software. We want to make sure that they're up to speed on what Infor does, have a single point of contact, have education on our products, executive alignment, all those good things, so that when they have a client that's selecting new software, they feel comfortable saying, you should evaluate Infor.
Right.
And that's all over here.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to have you show us around and meet some of your team here.
Absolutely. Come
Sweet.
on in.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, Michael, you and I used to actually be competitors. You worked for another independent advisory firm before you came to Infor. What made you decide to leave consulting to come work at Infor?
Well, I wanted to get the perspective of the vendor side of the house and see what they were going through. And an opportunity opened up at Infor that I felt was just too good to refuse. I'd worked very closely with Infor in my previous role, especially in manufacturing and distribution. And, whenever a client brings in a selection firm, it kind of ups the ante a little bit. So I knew I wanted to go somewhere that I would represent the selection firm community well from start to finish, from the sales process to the implementation process to the support process. And I had seen Infor do that time and time again. I also wanted to go somewhere where I wouldn't be limited to one segment of the market or one industry. So Infor goes across several industries in manufacturing, distribution, healthcare, public sector, and up and down the mid-market and into the enterprise level. So I wouldn't be limited in the types of customers I could work with or the segmentation of the market.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity to kind of expand what you've done over the last several years in consulting and apply it here at Infor.
Absolutely. Full circle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to compete with you anymore, too.
Exactly.
That's
yeah.
too.
It feels good. Yeah.
Right. All right, great. Should we keep walking?
Let's keep going.
So, Michael, having been a former independent consultant that advised to all different types of software vendors and advised clients on all different types of software vendors, you got to see the whole enterprise technology market, the ERP space. What do you see Infor's place being in the overall ERP ecosystem?
So whenever I was talking to my clients about software selection, a lot of the conversation was around risk mitigation. So what's going to help you achieve that future state without bringing the company down or bringing huge risk to the organization? And that's where I see Infor fitting in really well. So for example, upmarket against some of the other tier ones, Infor is going to meet them or even exceed them in some cases in terms of the functional capabilities that we bring to the table. But they also offer a world-class platform as a service. They offer a hybrid implementation approach in terms of we have our global professional services. We also have a partner ecosystem with some phenomenal implementation partners. So I see it as an alternative to some of the other tier ones that may be considered riskier to implement. And there's certainly stories out there all about that, where you're not sacrificing functionality, you're not sacrificing technology, but it's typically at a lower cost and at the end of the day, less risk for the customer.
Right. And it's interesting because Infor seems to have a strategy that's focused not only on applications with Cloud Suite and other products you have, but also that platform that you mentioned.
Absolutely.
And just creating kind of an ecosystem for organizations to be super flexible and not get too locked into one application necessarily the way it's built, but you know, you have to do other things with it.
Yes, our Infor OS, our operating software, that's our platform as a service. That is something that we are really hanging our hats on right now. We just did a conference all about that called Infor Now. And that was all about technology and how we're leveraging AWS, how we're leveraging our AI product, Coleman, how we're leveraging Ion, our middleware. So we're not just an applications company. Infor is really becoming a data company as well.
Right.
So it's an exciting time for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. You should keep walking.
Yeah, let's do it.
So over the years, Infor has acquired a number of legacy products like Bond and Lawson, for example. And Cloud Suite is clearly where the company seems to be focusing most of its attention going forward. How do all these different systems that Infor has acquired and grown organically, how do they all fit together longer term?
Sure. So the first decade of Infor, we were founded in 2002, and that first decade really was focused on acquisition and building the company. You get into decade two, and that's where cloud came into play, and that's been our strategy ever since. So building a relationship with AWS back in 2014 or so, and then putting all of those products into the cloud. So Bond became LN, which now we sell into discrete manufacturing, and we have industry-specific cloud suites. So industries like automotive, aerospace and defense, larger industrial organizations. You mentioned Lawson, that was M3, and then that's now sold into typically process manufacturing and distribution, so food and beverage, chemicals, larger distributors. So those products have been put into the cloud. They are fully multi-tenant, and that's our strategy going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting because some of the competitors you guys go up against, like SAP, for example, they've got S4HANA, and it's sort of like S4HANA is the answer to everything.
Sure.
And that's their go-to-market strategy, whereas you guys are saying we're not going to be one-size-fits-all. We're going to have different solutions depending on the vertical or what the needs are. Is that
We do.
fair
A big differentiator for Infor is the industry-specific focus, and our approach is to utilize different products to do that. So Infor Cloud Suite can refer to a few different ERPs and can be sold into multiple industries, up and down the mid-market and into the enterprise space.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's not one size fits all.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. So we're here in the sort of leadership section of your office here. How would you describe your leadership team here?
I would describe our leadership team. The first thing I think about is just laser focus on our customers. But they've certainly created a culture of openness. So everybody's door is open. And one of the things that I really like about them is that they're very aware of the fast-paced and ever-changing industry that we're in, right? Of technology and software. So if you're not a step ahead, you're a step behind, and they're very aware of that. So some of the things that they're doing with Infor OS, with the enterprise automation product that we just released, things of that nature, they are acutely aware of that, and they're all over it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun getting to know them while I'm here and asking them some of these tough questions we've got for them. So
Absolutely.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Cool. All right. Keep walking. So I want to ask you about culture and the culture of the organization here in a minute. But before I do, I noticed there's a lot of jazz references here.
Yeah.
Jazz icons in paintings throughout the office and conference rooms named after Ray Charles and other jazz artists.
Yeah.
How would you, first of all, what's the story behind the jazz references?
My understanding is that was influenced by our former CEO, Charles Phillips.
Okay.
So he was a big jazz fan, and I named the conference rooms and some of the other parts of the office after some jazz legends like McCoy Tyner or Ray Charles or Dizzy Gillespie, and kind of adds to the fun vibe that we have here in our New York headquarters.
Very cool. So speaking of fun, how would you describe the culture here at Infor?
Infor has a great culture, and it's driven heavily from our parent company, Koch Industries. So Koch has what they call principle-based management philosophies, and those are things like virtuous cycles of mutual benefit, principled entrepreneurship, and then things that you would hope to see in every company like humility and honesty and things like that. And what I think is cool about Infor is that they're referred to often, but people live them every day. So Infor is all about making it a win-win for us, our partners, and our clients. And I think that's really the culture that Koch has brought to Infor since they acquired Infor wholly in 2020. They were a minority owner before that, and that we are living out that vision.
Right. Yeah, and we're starting to sense that in some of the discussions we've had so far today. We're starting to pick up on some of that culture.
Absolutely. You'll be hearing a lot about that, the principle-based management approach. It's something that we live by.
Great.
Yeah.
So as we were walking through, I couldn't help but notice the big Triumph motorcycle right in the middle of your lobby. Why is this here?
Yeah, well, traffic can get pretty bad out there in New York City. So in case you need to zip down to a client meeting, we just hop on the bike.
Right.
Triumph is one of our clients. They're UK-based, and they were kind enough to loan us a bike to put in the office here. So it's pretty cool.
Very cool. And I also noticed you have a Brooklyn Nets jersey with Infor on it.
Yes. We were a sponsor for the Brooklyn Nets when the NBA started allowing advertising on the jerseys. Infor jumped at the opportunity to partner with our neighbors over in Brooklyn and sponsor the Nets.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see not only marketing strategies like this, but also just seeing a real life rendition of what your product is involved with making.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of times we forget that when we're in this space. We forget that the technology is actually creating stuff like this.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool.
So to get started in these leadership conversations with the Infor team, I'd love to start by chatting with Kevin, the CEO of the company, to get a sense of the direction and strategy.
Let's do it. Let's see what Kevin has to say.
All right. Kevin, good to see you.
Awesome to have you, Eric.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
I love it. Let's do it.
Great. So, Kevin, how would you summarize Infor's strategy in the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, at the highest level, the way we think about it is, ERP runs the most important processes for all of our customers in our core industries. And yet, when we look at the market and when we meet with customers, a lot of what we hear is, we love the potential of ERP. We know there's a lot of value there, but my gosh, the cost, pain, and risk to implement software is so difficult. Then the opportunity to take that software and allow it to continue to be flexible and add value over time is such a hurdle that there's got to be a better way to deploy and use ERP. And so our entire strategy is, how do we take on those massive challenges in the industry so that we can create and deliver software that's easy to deploy, adds value, and is agile enough to adapt as companies need it to as their markets and industries change.
Right.
And that's what we're here to do, and think there's a unique opportunity to do and deliver software very differently that we want to take advantage of.
Yeah. How does that compare or contrast to what other software vendors are doing in the marketplace, and how do you fit against those other competitors and vendors?
Yeah, so it's drastically different on a number of different fronts. Number one, we have a core belief that to really do something different in ERP, you have to be very industry focused. Now, it's in vogue to say industry focused, but let me describe what that really means to us. It starts with the product. we don't write one ERP platform and try to sell it into every single industry. We write an ERP platform for a very select number of industries. And that means that every single feature, function, configuration is set up so it can be deployed very quickly in an industry. We have the actual best practice capabilities and processes pre-configured in the product. We can then attach RPA and other things onto that. So by being industry focused, it starts with a product all the way through from feature function to deployment. Our individual people are also experts in those industries. So from sales to delivery to support, our teams only focus on a few specific industries. So our belief is by massively changing how we build a product, how we deliver it, how we support it, with a lot of industry knowledge, that can really unlock a lot of value, deploy more quickly, and like I said, allow for more agility over time.
So you're not taking a one-size-fits-all approach. You're taking more of an industry-focused approach to the different applications you guys deploy.
You've got it. I mean, we are laser focused on 7 industries, healthcare in the US, and then a few in discrete manufacturing, a few in process manufacturing. And we're all in on those. And that's a big, big differentiation point relative to the alternatives.
Right. Now, Coke has been a big investor in the company, not the beverage company Coke,
Yes,
but the
that's right.
private equity venture capital firm. How has that affected that investment from Coke? How has that affected your strategy going forward?
It's been an enormous unlock for us as it relates to strategy. And I'll give you a couple of very specifics. The first is, Coke is private and very large and very well capitalized. And I think one of the challenges in the industry as a whole is customers buy our software and their customers for 10 or 20 years. And the challenge is in a public environment, you've got these quarters, and every quarter you've got to post a sales number. And that requires, from our perspective, a lot of sort of unnatural things to get things sold that maybe aren't in the best interest of customers. And our ability to be able to think long-term, to make much larger investments, and to partner with our customers and do what's in their best interests, we think allows us to do all sorts of things differently, from how we build our software, how we sell it, of course, how we deploy it, how we add value over time. And that wouldn't be possible without being private with lots and lots of capital, and not just the ability, but the encouragement to make big bets and challenge the status quo. And it's an unbelievably unique organization that allows us to do that.
Yeah, and scale faster, ultimately, I imagine.
No question.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. So where do you see Infor headed in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, we're definitely headed for great things. I think we spent billions of dollars completely rewriting our products into those industry-specific suites that are multi-tenant enabled, that offer the latest technology. That was a big, big bet that we made. Those were completed a couple of years ago. We've had really dramatic growth in our SaaS business as a result. We've put a lot into everything from our culture to how we're organized to how we deploy differently. And just from our advantage, just at the very beginning of seeing all of that pay off. And if you kind of look at history, every time there's a big change in technology, so think mainframe to client server or client server to the cloud, there's a complete change in leadership. You probably can't name any of the mainframe players that were around because they were all taken out by the client server players. A lot of other elements in software, other areas, same thing has happened. Cloud companies have come along and displaced the legacy client server companies. We think ERP is sort of at that stage where there is an opportunity for someone to disrupt the status quo. And we're obviously biased, but we think with the big investments, the differentiated strategy, the ability to make big bets, we're in a position to now do that. And so we're super optimistic about the next few years.
Yeah, sounds exciting.
Definitely.
What about the things that keep you up at night as you look to execute this strategy going forward? What are the biggest risks you see? What keeps you up at night?
A lot of things keep me up at night. But, I think I feel great about where we are with the products. Like I said, I feel great about our ability to do things that are long-term. I still think the biggest opportunity that exists is how do we make sure that the entire experience for a customer is seamless? And the way I think us and most software companies are set up is you've got an engineering team and a sales team and a services team. But that's not really the way that customers want to experience the software experience. And so how do we better organize our structure? But frankly, how do we better further our culture to make sure that us and our teams are thinking about that entire customer journey and become much more seamless to work with?
Right.
Like general view is if we've got the deep industry knowledge, we really understand opportunity, we've got the advantage products and technology. That final piece that I think we're still working to optimize is how do we just change that overall experience, which with 17,000 people and thousands of customers, that's a big lift. But I think that's what keeps me up at night, because I feel like that's a big unlock that we still have in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great chatting with you. I appreciate your time, and it's exciting times ahead for sure. And I look forward to seeing where you guys go in the next few years.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time, Kevin.
Yep,
Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So that was a great conversation with Kevin, getting a real sense of where the company's headed and what the differentiators are.
Mm-hmm.
But it all starts with a great team. So I'd love to meet your HR person, Ben. He's a CHRO. He's in town from London, right?
Absolutely. Let's go see Ben Perry.
All right.
All right.
And good to see you. Yeah, thanks for having me here today. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? Of course. All right, great. So Ben, you oversee all of HR within Infor globally, right?
Yes.
So what kind of culture is it that you guys are trying to create when it comes to talent acquisition and retaining employees, rewarding employees, all that stuff? What's the culture like that you're trying to create?
So we're very clear on how we articulate the culture. We call our culture principle-based management. And it differs from a number of companies that set rules. We find rules restrictive and hinder people's opportunities. So if you set an overall arching principle and people know what they can behave, what their decision rights are, how they can operate, then we see people are more motivated, they feel more accountable, they can operate within those principles. So it's this, the removal of structure makes the employees more accountable, and we find that gives them more buy-in, more motivation, and it's an interesting concept because, I don't know, if you've got sort of children, you can say, here's your curfew, and that becomes a restriction. Whereas if you educate your children on the decisions they make, and, you know, this is the implications of those decisions, then you're driving that accountability across to them. So that's, you know, and I don't see the employees as children here, but the principle still works.
Right.
That, you know, if you say one of our principles is economic thinking, we'll push that towards the employees and say, when you're behaving, you have to think about how you're investing money, what's the return on capital committed, you know, does this make sense long term? Is it generating value for the company? And so you can set a principle, and now everyone should be looking at spend of money through that lens, rather than being restrictive, saying this is your spend requirement, you know, this is the approvals that you have to have. Instead, you set the principle, so we don't really operate to budgets. So you know, if you can get a return on investment, it makes sense. You're empowered to make that decision. Clearly, some of the sort of huge spends you would have to get approval for.
Right.
But it's about driving that empowerment and accountability in the organization, rather than having that structure and policing function.
It seems like that would drive a lot of innovation and creativity in a different sort of way by not being too rules-based.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, that's one of the elements of how we look at roles. So rather than having a prescriptive role, we build around the people. And I think building, you know, architecting a role and considering everyone the same really hinders their opportunity to do things they love, maximize their contribution, maximize their value, maximize their innovation. So what we do is we look at the people and say, how do we architect a role around them and what their passions are? And then we see much more marginal contribution, much more motivation, much more interest in the business. So, and it does create sort of a messy, flexible environment, because it's very easy to say, I've got 6 resources, they all do the same thing. But I think there's much more value in saying each of those 6 resources could be 20% different in their format. So we can play to people's passions. So I've got sales groups as an example, where we've got people who are really good at incubating talent and building talent, and we've got other people who are really good at pushing their sales guys to overachieve. Now, they're doing the same roles, they're both sort of frontline sales managers, but if you look at this as a sort of propagator for talent, and you look at this one as an executioner of talent, then they add value in different ways, but they're doing very different roles within the same job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So all this talk of culture and organizational design and creating people's roles, how does that affect Infor's products and ultimately Infor's customers?
So I guess one of the key tenets of our vision is we succeed when our customers succeed. And our products are designed for specific industries. So it's not like some other companies that would take a generic product and then customize that product to work for any customer. We've called out some industries where we build a best-in-class product for, and then that builds this intimacy with the customers. So if we're in, say, food and bev, we spend a lot of time with a food and bev customer. We have a product that works for food and bev customers. We'll interact with them to understand if it's best in class. And then as we look at how the product is used, we can compare food and bev as an example, this cheese manufacturer with that cheese manufacturer.
Yeah.
And then we can say, actually, they use a different process or they use our product in a different way, and they've gained these efficiencies by doing that. So that allows us to actually look at what's best practice for those customers in that industry, and that inherently comes into the product and builds its way into the product.
Right.
Also, I think it's the freedom of our guys. If I keep harping back to sort of the principles, the guys aren't restrictive on how they can deliver. So we look at it in terms of return on capital and these economic decisions. And because of the structure of the company, we effectively have unlimited access to capital. So one of the things we do is say to people, if you come up with an idea and, we call it a principled entrepreneurship, you come up with an idea, you can see a return on capital, you can see the value it creates. As long as you've ticked all those boxes, then, invest in that, move it forward, innovate and be entrepreneurial. And I think that creates that different spirit of, you can take your ideas, you can take your passions and then drive that through the company, which I haven't seen in previous companies.
Right. Yeah, and still within those parameters that you're...
Yeah, there's sort of parameters, but that it's much looser rather than a set of rules that we just say, this is how we're operating. And just about at any level in the company, you can say, I've come up with this idea, I can see a good return, I can see the value it generates. And the key thing is if it generates mutual value and long-term mutual value between us and customers, that's the key for what we want to do. It's about a long-term partnership, and that's pretty unique to Infor as a customer. How we look at customers is, we want to build something longer term. We want to deliver value to them because inherently that's how we're going to make money.
So what are the biggest challenges you face as CHRO when building a team that positions Infor for ongoing growth and success?
I think one of the areas that's most difficult for us is how we look at things from a company. We're looking for long-term success. Inherently, when we find talent, they tend to be in companies that are floated on the stock market, that have a quarterly cadence of delivery. And that sometimes manifests itself in them doing unnatural acts at the end of each quarter, giving up margin more than you should to hit a revenue number. And when people come and join Infor, we have to sort of reset that paradigm. We'd rather miss a quarter but generate long-term value with the customer.
Right.
And so it's just realigning people to think about it and to say, we win when the customer wins. We win when we have mutual cycles of benefit with the customer. It's a very different motion than hitting a sales number on a quarterly cadence.
Right.
And it freaks people out because you turn around and you say, if you miss the number, that's okay, as long as longer term we're going to see a view to I guess greater success on a long term basis.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Playing the long game rather than focusing on short term results. Great. Well, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. This has been enlightening to hear how you build the culture in the team and some of the philosophies you guys focus on here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we talked to Ben about building a culture, building a team, which is a great foundation for achieving the strategies we haven't talked about. But what about your chief customer officer? Mari handles a lot of
implementation, support, Let's see what Mari has to say. We are a customer-centric organization, so I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Let's do it.
Awesome.
Mari, nice to meet you. You too. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
You mind if I ask you a few questions?
Would love it.
All right, great. So, Mari, you're the Chief Customer Officer. What does that mean, and what does that role entail here at Infor?
Absolutely. So the Chief Customer Officer at Infor, the teams that I lead are around support, managed services, our customer success teams, references, and a couple of operational organizations that really help drive scale and efficiency for the teams.
Great. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So with implementations being challenging for any organization, and at times these sorts of projects could fail, what are you guys doing to overcome that? And what do you do differently to make sure your customers are successful in avoiding some of the common risks with ERP implementations in general?
Yeah, I mean, and it's absolutely real, right? They are very, very certainly labor intensive and certainly full of a lot of risk. I think one of the main things we do is really focus a lot on our implementation methodologies. So we've spent a lot of time looking at the thousands of implementations we've done and pulling out best practices and baking that back into the methodology in itself, the implementation methodology. And so what that means is that we can provide a lot of comfort to our customers that we can implement with a high degree of certainty that we're going to be on time and on budget. And that's a pretty big element, right? We also have a lot of actual tooling and software within the platform underneath our technology that helps provide automation, AI efficiency. So a lot of times we're also trying to take the work away from the implementation itself.
Yeah.
And ultimately we're organized internally by a cloud suite and by expertise in industry area. And so ideally, if the product is built through an industry lens and our teams are organized through an industry lens, we're able to bring enough expertise to the actual process itself to make it be less risky, right? Because we should be able to really predict our customers' needs and be able to achieve those outcomes in an easier way than someone who's driving a horizontal platform and doesn't really understand the business.
Right, absolutely. So what is it you and your teams are doing to ensure that you're mitigating implementation risk and getting the most value out of the software once your customers are up and running?
Yeah, well, so Infor overall really encourages our customers to stick to the industry best practices, like our standard processes that are included in our software. I think that's incredibly important because, again, we've worked with companies in these industries. We've had this experience, and so a lot of the efficiencies are already built in. So that's a really, really important first key step. And the second part I would say is really understanding the needs across a full spectrum of people, process, and technology, right? So we want to make sure that our customers are thinking about what skills they're going to need within their teams when the solutions go live. They may be different than the folks that they have today. That can be achieved either through training and enablement or through maybe even new hires or even hiring external firms. We also want to make sure that they're ready to take advantage of the cloud, right? One of the best part about being in SaaS and in the cloud is that you do have innovation that's coming out every 6 months. So you want to make sure that our customers are thinking about that, how they're not only testing the technology, but again, even thinking about how to take advantage of the innovation that's going to be in every release cycle, because Infor is putting in all of this effort, all of this money to build these great industry-specific solutions. And that innovation is going to help our customers really reach their own competitive advantage.
Right. And so your goal is really not only to get the business value, but also make them more self-sufficient, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And by the way, if they don't have the skills, there's partners, Infor services, we can certainly help them as well. But the idea is to really help get our customers very comfortable with the solutions, trained, stood up, having the right skills, no matter where they're going to get them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds very fascinating. Is that your job is where the rubber meets the road.
And
you got the technology in the background, and then you're the one that your teams are making it happen.
Absolutely is.
So, yeah.
My job is to make sure that we are partners and they're our customers for decades to come.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Mari.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right.
So we talked about the strategy and the culture and the people and the customers of the organization. But this all comes back to the product itself too, right? And Soma is a bit of a rock star. He's a chief technical officer here. He's really well known in the industry, one of the first Infor employees.
He is, yes. Everybody loves Soma.
Yeah, so I feel like we need to talk to him too.
Let's see what Soma has to say.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Soma,
Anyway,
Good to see you again. We've seen a lot of each other the last few months with podcasts and conferences and things like that.
Yeah. It's it's always enriching interactions when I meet you. So excited to meet you again.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm excited to ask you some questions here today.
Awesome.
So, Soma, you're president and CTO, Chief Technical Officer. What exactly does that role mean here at Infor?
Yeah, it's sort of like chief cook and bottle washer. So, and just kidding.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah. So, I have a long history with Infor. In fact, I'm employee number one with Infor. I wrote a product which got bought by a company which eventually became Infor. So, because of my longevity and closeness to the customers, my role really includes R&D, which is my trade. But beyond that, I have product management and I have pre-sales or solution consulting, customer success, support, education and enablement. So anybody who touches products or customer outside of actual delivery, that's under one team, and that's what I'm responsible for.
Got it. Okay. So in the years that I've been familiar with Infor, I've learned a lot about different products that you guys have developed and sold over the years. And you've also had sort of a platform strategy that you've pursued in parallel. So I guess my question for you is, do you consider Infor a platform company or an application company?
Yeah, that's a very loaded question, right? So I would say that Infor's core existence started with the fact that we are so specific to industries we serve, right? So by that definition, we are an app company. We provide application capabilities to serve those industries we serve. But over time, now that we are in the cloud, we spend billions of dollars to get to cloud. And when you're in the cloud, the traditional ERP as it was implemented in the past doesn't work quite like that, right? So in order to provide that level of flexibility for us and also for the customers and our partner ecosystem, you need to really have a platform architecture that embraces data and the services the app offers to bring it in a fashion that allows for that business transformational capability for our customers. So I would say we are an industry app company with a very strong platform powering those application capabilities.
Right. And I was intentionally asking either your question trying to box you in, but obviously that didn't apply here, but that's really interesting. And that seems to be a big differentiator with Infor strategy, is that combination of industry-specific apps and the overall platform.
100%. And then one more thing I would add there is that we also believe that the hyperscaler we bet on, which is AWS, they are spending tens of billions of dollars, bringing that as part of our platform to bring those capabilities to our customers. That will, I think, ultimately will allow us and customer to accelerate innovation.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of platform capabilities for sure.
So you mentioned that you've been at the company for a long time. You're one of the very first employees. You've been here for close to 20 years, right?
Yeah, more than 20 years, yeah.
More
than 21 years.
21 years.
Plus, yeah.
What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the company in that time?
Yeah, I think the number one change, we started with the thesis that industry specificity matters. And that led to the first phase, assimilating assets and getting people in the organization who are capable of delivering on that vision. But then the most significant change, I would say, is in the second phase, which is building brand new modern cloud capabilities using what we know in terms of IP that we own and the people who have the knowledge, but then creating this capability, which we just talked about in terms of, is it software application or is it platform, building those modern cloud architecture and delivering industry cloud on AWS in this case is, I think, that's not for the faint of heart. It took years and billions of dollars of investment to get there.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like a very big shift in a fairly short period of time. 21 years is a long time, but that's a lot of change in 20 years.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So a lot of people may not know this, but Infor has acquired a lot of legacy software solutions over the years. For example, Bond and Lawson. How have the acquisitions of those two products and other products that you've acquired over the years, how has that affected or has it affected the direction of Infor Cloud Suite?
Yeah, the first phase of Infor, like I just mentioned, was based on acquiring assets that have industry capabilities at a level of depth that will allow us to differentiate from our competition. So that's how Bond or Lawson and other solutions like that came into Infor's portfolio. The fact that we had that industry capabilities at the end of that acquisition phase really allowed us to really think about, in Lawson, we serve healthcare, having full knowledge of how healthcare organizations work and what kind of capabilities we need to support their business transformation capabilities. And that's really set the direction in terms of what solutions we build in the cloud, what kind of capabilities we need to build in the cloud. Without those acquisitions, we wouldn't have been able to do that, because it's very hard to sort of sit in an ivory tower and understand how a particular industry works. So I would say that played a major role. What we then did is take the new capabilities, new technologies, and cloud capabilities that we embraced with the AWS and what we built natively with what we call Infor OS. The combination of the two is what defines who Infor is today.
Gotcha. So you weren't forced to start from scratch. You had some capabilities you were able to acquire and some experience you were able to acquire to really build on that to go forward with this evolving strategy as you move forward.
Exactly.
So when you look at all the different moving parts of the Infor Cloud Suite and other products that you guys are managing, what technological advances or initiatives are you most excited about in the Infor world right now?
Yeah, right now, by design or by luck or the combination of the two, right? So we built capabilities in the platform that I just referred to as Infor OS, where we built a data strategy and an API strategy in a fashion that I would venture to say allows us to have a future-proof platform. Now, if you think about 2022, no one was talking about Gen AI.
Right.
In 23, that's all everybody is talking about, right? So when you have a new innovation like that, which has a lot of promise and potential for us to bring to fruition to the industries we serve, it needs to be meaningful in terms of business outcomes that we can deliver. And there's a lot of excitement. I'm super excited about what that offers. And I feel like we have the right foundation in place that will allow us to progress and embrace these new capabilities without having to go back and refactor, right? So if you have to go refactor, that's actually starting from scratch, right? So we're fortunate enough to have an architecture in place, and I'm super excited about what these new Gen AI capabilities that we can bring to the market.
Yeah, it seems like the opportunities are limitless, especially with that foundation you guys have to start with.
Exactly, yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, Soma. It's really interesting to hear these perspectives and to get to know you a little bit more. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. So that was a great conversation with Soma.
Yeah.
Talked a lot about the applications, the platforms, direction of the company technologically. One thing we didn't get into that's kind of related to Soma, though, is user experience, user interface. And your head of design is Nuns. I had him on my podcast recently, and I'd love to get a chance to sit down with him as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Nuns has to say about what we're doing with user experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, sounds good. Nuns, good to see you.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Awesome.
Good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
No, not at all. Let's do it.
All right. So, Nuns, you're the head of design here at Infor. What does that mean? What does that role entail?
It's a lot of roles. No. It basically covers two spectrums of our Cloud Suite offering. So on one side, it's the remit is how do we better harmonize, bring together the capabilities so it comes across as a single experience, a single solution for our customers and our end users. And then on the other side, we're responsible for our design language and our design system, which is basically the foundational underpinnings of our user interface.
Got it. Okay. And now, for potential buyers of ERP systems or anyone who's deploying an ERP system, why is design so important?
Well, I think when we were chatting at one time on the podcast, we were talking about, first impressions matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for, customers or prospects that are looking to either upgrade, they're implementing, they selected the vendor, or they're trying to select who they're be picking. Design is so crucial because it's not just about how it looks, it's about how it feels, how it acts, how it responds. So you can imagine as you're making these selections, your workers, your constituents, your employees, your staff, they're spending a lot of time in and out of these systems, and you want to make sure that it delivers on that business promise of being, a value add, and you want to make sure that they feel good about doing it too.
Right.
So, that's how we look at the holistic design experience, and we want to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable to that kind of end user satisfaction.
Right. Now, you use the word harmonization, and it triggered a thought here that, Infor has a number of different products.
Yep.
Cloud suites or different cloud suites.
Yep.
You have Bond and Lawson and other systems that you've acquired over the years. It would seem like that user interface, user experience is even more important in that sort of environment to create that harmonization across platforms. Is that how you view it, or
Yeah, totally. I mean, we take design really serious here. And sure, everybody I think wants to make sure we it'd be ideal if we can move faster. The nirvana would be really delivering that kind of end user singularity. But reality is, the way we look at it is there's different cycles of maturity. We have different technology at times that we have to harmonize, but it is all centralized around OS and our cloud platform. And that's the way that we have found the quickest path towards delivery in creating that kind of consistency and continuity of the experience. So when we're working with some of those different engines, as we say in design, the ERPs, we take that into account in our strategic prioritization. And I think that, especially this feature release for October, you really get to see the fruits of that labor when it all comes together at a workspace level and what it means inside the OS portal. So, I would tell you, for our customers or prospects, we're just getting started, and, they're going to see a ton more of that kind of symmetry moving forward.
Right. Now, speaking of moving forward, where do you see the whole field of user design within the world of ERP? Where do you see it going in the next 3 to 5 years?
It's dramatically changing, and it's really hard to say, especially given the capabilities of Gen AI. So for viewers or listeners, the GPT, and I think we're really enamored by it, and I think a lot of people are also scared of what it's capable of doing. In regards to design, I'd say in the next 3 to 5 years, really getting the ability to get into a centralized single interface that probably won't change. Meaning, it's almost like back in the day with the green screen with the prompts. It's like the next iteration of that, because the back end is becoming so sophisticated, so knowledgeable, and can synthesize and parse information more than a human could. It allows for design to think about new paradigms around what it means to just be in one thing.
Right.
And how can we create better clarity in a engagement model, meaning human language, and how should the system respond to it? So I think you're going to see a lot more human interaction as far as dialogue is concerned. And I think the one benefit, to just sum it up too, is I think there's a big opportunity for scaling consistency and making experience, like making things that those systems are going to handle, which would be less on the execution side for the things our teams have to handle.
Gotcha. Interesting. Well, very cool. I appreciate your time today. This is super interesting, and it's
awesome.
User interface is one of those things I don't think a lot of people think about. It's something that's so important, but it's sort of like you're doing the stuff in the background that everyone sees and feels when they're
we take it for granted, but it's the thing we actually see all the time.
Yeah, every day.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no doubt. It was great seeing you.
Yeah, you too. Well, Michael, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
It was great to get to know your team and learn more about the strategy and really the faces and the brains behind what makes this company tick. So I appreciate all of your time and your team's time as well.
It was a lot of fun. Let's do it again sometime.
Let's do.
Yeah.
And for those of you watching, I'd love to hear your feedback. What do you think about this behind-the-scenes experience with Infor? I'd love to hear your comments below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. Michael Thankle, enterprise applications vendors in the space today.
Yeah.
Oh, see?
No.
Ooh, did you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
Yes. One shot. There it goes.